everybody.
Hi.
We are just getting our Bibles together. We are getting ready for all of this. Are your pages stuck together?
My pages are stuck together, or I don't have chapter 8.
There we go.
There
Okay.
it is.
Just kidding. Just
I
kidding.
have it. It's here.
We need chapter 8, right? So if you have your Bibles and you are with us, you can go ahead and open them up. Open 1 Corinthians chapter 8. And as we've said before, we like paper Bibles and we like Bibles on our phone. So I'm more partial to paper, but you do whatever it takes for you to get in the Word, right? That's important. So that's a blessing. Hold on, I'm gonna unclick on this. Here we go, and make it quiet. Okay, well, it is Wednesday night, and so it's like time for Wednesday night church.
It is.
Hey, Veronica, we're here. I know people are going to be hopping on as they do. When you jump on, please say hello and share this with your friends and whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do. The good news about tonight is that 1 Corinthians chapter 8 is short.
Yep. Yep, it is. Let's see.
It is, how many verses?
13.
13 verses. We could probably, make an hour out of this, but we probably won't because the topic is just one topic, and there's just like one really great big point to pull out of all of this, and we could probably only say that so many times, but maybe we could say it a lot. We'll see. We'll let you know when we end. If it's 8 o'clock or if it's 7:15. Either way, we're in the Word. We're in the Word together. Good for you that you've opened up the Bible and you're in 1 Corinthians 8 tonight. So that's all I got. Last chapter, we talked about Christian marriage. We talked about just relationships, basically, even with the opposite sex. And so that was a little bit juicy. This is not as juicy today, so don't you worry. But we are going to talk about something we all love to do, and that is eat.
I thought it was shopping.
Oh, maybe shopping. That's the next chapter. No, I'm
shopping.
Kidding. Yeah. But yeah, we're going to talk about food. We're going to talk about eating and how that plays a role in our cute little Christian lives. So I don't know. You want to read down like a few, and then
yes.
I don't want you to read too fast. Don't read 13 chapter verses. You could, but maybe just break in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Thanks, Veronica.
And if anything jumps out at you that you feel like, I don't know, that God revealed to you throughout these verses, comment on there and, let's learn along. Yes.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
All right.
Good idea. Good
verse
idea.
1 says, "Now regarding your question about food that has been offered to idols, yes, we know that we all have knowledge, about this issue. But while knowledge makes us feel important, it is love that strengthens the church. Anyone who claims to know all the answers doesn't really know very much." Yeah.
That's kind of that should take us down a few notches, right? So it says, and I like in your translation because it says, "Now about your question." So the church in Corinth had written Paul and said specifically, like, what are we supposed to do about this food sacrificed to idols? So what we need to know, kind of the backstory, is that here's what the pagan religions did in the city of Corinth, not in the Christian church, but in the city of Corinth. There were lots of there was the temple of Aphrodite, right? And so the temple of Aphrodite, people would come down and they would sacrifice animals to this goddess Aphrodite. And so what would happen is
Hi.
my husband would come and say hello.
Yeah.
Hi.
Remember you're at the Temple of Aphrodite's.
Temple
All
of
right.
Aphrodite.
So the lips aren't working again
Oh,
with the
sound.
So
Good.
but last night it did. And the
It
only
worked?
thing I did was touch this. So hold on. Let's see.
How do we sound?
All right, there
We
it
got
is.
sound back.
Okay.
Woo!
Sorry
Okay.
about that.
Wow, my face looks so big on there now. Oh,
Well,
that's
you
really
leaned
close to that
all
camera.
the way forward.
All right. Woo! All right, I'm out of here. Yeah, that was good. Hopefully it works. If not, well, I think it's that cable. We've narrowed it
All right.
down.
I'll flick it.
You want me to?
I
I know. He's like,
I have redone everything. So, all right. See ya.
all right. Thanks for
Temple of
coming.
Aphrodite's. That's where you're at.
Thank
Temple
you.
of Aphrodite. Thank you, Dar. That's great. All right. All right. That's Temple of Aphrodite. So people would come, the pagan people, not the Christian people. People would come and they would offer animal sacrifices to the temple at Aphrodite. And then what would happen is that, idols aren't real. I'm telling you something you already know. Idols aren't real. They're just statues or something that somebody built. And so how they described it is they said, oh, well, the idol has a spirit. And so the idol would eat the spirit of the animal because the idol doesn't actually eat the animal. Clearly, the idol just sits there. And so it eats the spirit of the animal. And so then once that is done, guess what? They can take it and they can sell it. The meat.
Yeah.
So they take it down
That's
to
right.
like the temple butcher shop. And remember, they, kind of like there are Jewish people in the Old Testament, they only brought the best. So they only brought the best down there, and then it makes its way, or a large part of it makes its way down to the temple butcher.
That's right.
Which is very suspect, right? I mean, like, wow, this is actually a money-making endeavor, but okay. And so if you really wanted a good cut of meat, if you wanted a good porterhouse or ribeye or filet mignon, if you really wanted a good piece of meat, you would go to the temple butcher. And guess what? A lot of Christians, these Christians who are in the church in Corinth, they were getting all spun up about this. They were like, well, if we go and buy this meat, or if we go to somebody's house, we're like, wow, this is really great food. Where'd you get this? And they're like, oh, we got it from Aphrodite's temple's butcher. And they're like, oh, that's,
Yeah.
we could never, we should never, we should not participate. And you can kind of understand, right? It's probably maybe a little bit strange for people. But Paul says, I hear you. I hear this question. And this is super important because we have liberty. We have freedom in Jesus Christ. But that doesn't mean we get to do whatever we want.
Right.
Because often we can cause other people to stumble. So he starts right off and he says, we possess all knowledge. And knowledge puffs us up, or knowledge gives us like
Arrogance.
arrogance. I was like, what did yours say? Yours was so good. Knowledge gives us arrogance, but love builds us up. And so the man who thinks he knows something doesn't really know much. And you know that, and I know that, and when we kind of fake it till we make it sometimes. I've done it, pretending, people are talking about aerospace or chemical bonds, and I'm like, oh yes, yeah, and I'm like, got no clue what I should really just admit that I don't know what you're saying, but then it's too late because I'm in the conversation. So yes, but that's it, right? Knowledge puffs us up, and we just need to act with love. And so it says the man who loves God is known by God. So this is kind of the whole point of this sweet little chapter is, is that even though like this food is sacrificed to idols and Christians are going and buying it because they like that good meat and then they're eating it, it clearly was like a big enough problem that they wrote to Paul about it and said, we really need some clarification. So that's the whole backstory. Are you with us? Are you still with us? That's the backstory. And that is exactly why Paul has to talk about idol meat. Idol meat. It's not a cut of meat. It's just like meat given to idols. So I think that's where we're headed anyway. So
yeah, and I think a lot of times like Christians would buy this meat because we knew that it was a fake ritual, I guess, right? So
absolutely.
So
absolutely.
It was like, all
so
right.
It's like, who cares?
Right. It's just,
yeah. Can you eat? Do you ever go to those Chinese restaurants and they have like the things to Buddha or
right.
or
like
maybe they're
the oranges
and they get the oranges and sometimes they have like orange chicken, and and the kids are always like, can I just take one?
Alyssa picked up an orange and I was like,
no. Now, could we eat that food?
Sure.
Absolutely. Like the people would probably, get
Kick
a little
us out
upset. But could we eat it? It's just orange chicken.
Yeah.
It's
What's the difference between that
I
one
know,
that Buddha has
maybe it's
and
just
the
cold,
one
but
behind the window?
Yeah, because it came from behind the window. And everybody loves orange chicken. And everybody loves oranges. Or whatever else they're putting on there. Yeah. I don't know. We see all sorts of things.
Yeah. So again, sorry, we went off on a tangent there, but so yeah, we buy it because we have that freedom, right? That we know that it's a fake ritual that's for a fake god, and we have I don't know, I'm trying to like not lose my words here. So if we were to bring it over and not tell anybody where we got it from, like everything's fine, right?
Absolutely.
But if a baby Christian, I guess, right, would see us at the temple and they'd be like, oh, we can do that too. Like, I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
So that
why are they hanging out at the temple? Like, that's kind of odd because that's where the bad people are.
But because, again, they don't know that we have that freedom, it causes them to stumble because,
Yes, misunderstandings. Right. Absolutely. So love is more important than knowledge, and so even though we know, we've got to exhibit some love and some care for people who are who are not at our level. Look at us being all snotty.
Smart, or what is it? Full of knowledge.
Full of knowledge. I'm so full of knowledge. I can do whatever I want. Yes, you can. But and
but our actions. Causes them to stumble.
Absolutely. And so people who have problems with addiction, and it's like, well, you don't invite them over to your house and whatever. Yes. If they're alcoholics, don't serve them liquor. If they're trying to kick smoking. These are all things that. We're not going to argue about smoking or drinking or whatever. That's not where we're going with this. I'm just saying if they have a problem with it, then you're like, oh, you could do whatever you want. So just have some. It's like, well, they might have an issue, so we need to love them more than we care about our own freedom.
Right.
Ooh, that's a sacrifice, people.
Yep. And Paul will also be talking about that here, I think.
Yes. You want to read that?
Yes. Verse 3. But the person who loves God is the one whom God recognizes. I think we read that already. So what about eating meat that has been offered to idols? Well, we all know that the idol is not really a god and that there is only one God. There may be so-called gods both in heaven and on earth, and some people actually worship many gods and many lords. But for us, there is one God, the Father, by whom all things were created and for whom we live. And there is one Lord, Jesus Christ, Lord whom all things were created, and through whom we live. Oh, that is nice. I'm about to highlight that.
Highlight. She's highlighting on her thing. I'm highlighting it with my pen. So it's still highlighting. So that's exactly what you said. Like, we know that the idols are fake. We know that the idols are fake. I remember should have looked it up, but it's a verse that says, don't you find it odd that, like, they cut down a tree and they carve an idol out of, like, part of the tree, and the rest of the tree becomes firewood, you know? And it's like, that's an idol? Like, you know, it's like the splinter next to it is firewood, but this side becomes an idol that you worship and give food to, and that's silly. That's ridiculous. And I know that a lot of times I get it. I think it's hard to, like, worship a God that we cannot see. You know, I know a lot of Catholics, they always have, like, a statue of Mary, you know, so that they can, you know, I don't know that they worship that statue, but, you know, it's like they hold that, usually they hold that statue in some kind of place of reverence in their home, a shrine. That's exactly it. And it's like, it's a piece of plastic. It's not Mary. I get it. She was highly favored, and I'm Mary's biggest fan. Like, but I can't worship her because she's not God. Right. So these idols are just pieces of plastic, pieces of wood, pieces of metal.
This reminds me of back in Exodus when the people created their own idol, right? Out of gold, I think.
Yeah,
it was, like,
they took all their jewelry and
melted it.
And because Moses was up on the mountain for too long. Right. And so they got anxious and they were like, let's make our own God. What a great idea. Yeah, God was not impressed. Moses was not impressed. And
he was angry.
He was angry. Yeah, that's a good example, Veronica, because that's one of those times where, like, they were being led, you know, by Moses. Like, they had just seen all these amazing miracles, all forgotten. We're going to melt something down and make something pretty and worship that. And what? Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we're just used to, I don't know. Are you used to just worshiping a God that is not a statue? You know, I find God in the Bible. I find God in prayer. I find God in worship. And so I don't need, like, a piece of, I don't, you know, I know some people, like, kiss the cross, and, like, I don't need that either. No. Like, God is right here with me. And that makes a lot of sense to me. But I guess that doesn't make sense to everybody.
No, it does not.
There we go.
Yeah. But that relationship takes time in order, you know, like, it took us some time to get where we're at now, to experience the presence, you know,
of God.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, I can see how they became anxious and why they would worship these other idols.
Yeah, and if it's something that they've always done, right? You know, this temple to Aphrodite was, like, you know, it was an acropolis, right? So that means that it was the building, the highest part of the city. That, you know, there are acropolises all over the place. There's one in Greece. I can't remember what's the capital of Greece? I'm having a moment.
Let's see.
Because this is an acropolis in Corinth. So every city had an acropolis, like a place, like a temple, and it would be on the highest part of the city. And Athens.
Okay.
Ooh, thank you.
Oh,
thank you, Google. Yes. Athens, everybody goes and visits the Acropolis in Athens. That's kind of like a famous one. It's a big one, but all of these cities had one. So Corinth, which we know for the past 7 chapters is like the Las Vegas of this area. It is Sin City. And, we talked about last time how even in this temple of Aphrodite, there were 1,000 Vestal virgins, prostitutes. And you would go and you would give sacrifices to the statue of Aphrodite. And then people would basically just have sex with these prostitutes, and it was considered part of their worship and part of their religion. What? But anyway, so Corinth, not the place to raise your kids. But here we are. There's a church in Corinth, and Paul really needs to help these people out, because I think they've gotten past the Vestal Virgins thing. They know they're not supposed to do that,
right.
But now they're like, so wait, so the meat is okay? Like, how is any of this? I don't want any part of these people. And so that's obviously what Paul needs to address here. There you go.
All right. Yep.
Next, I guess.
Yep. Verse 7.
Tell us if we're going too fast.
However, not all believers know this. Some are accustomed to thinking of idols as being real. So when they eat food that has been offered to idols, they think of it as the worship of real gods, and their weak consciences are violated. It's true that we can't win God's approval by what we eat. We don't lose anything if we don't eat it, and we don't gain anything if we do. But you must be careful so that your freedom does not cause others with a weaker conscience to stumble.
There you go. So that's kind of what we were talking about, like those who are accustomed to idols. So obviously this whole city is accustomed to thinking that this temple of Aphrodite, I mean, they know now that it's not real. They understand that. I think these Christians are they're understanding there's only one true God, and that's not that statue up on the top of the hill. That's, the fancy place. That's not it. However, they've lived in Corinth for a long time, I'm sure. And so their generation and the past generation and the generation before that, they all think about idols as their gods. So it makes sense to them that, anything that would be having to do with this idol would be bad, because now they think idols are bad. But they still have this reality for them. We think that it's just a joke. It's a statue. Like, what's it's like, I don't know. I don't really put a lot of time and energy. They say about like all those Egyptian mummies and, and there's like a curse and all that stuff. And it's like, that sounds like a lot of superstition to me. That's kind of not how God really works in my life. And so, but if I was still superstitious, because I still kind of understood, that part of my city's legacy, I might be bothered by it. I may not want to hang out with spooky things or whatever, kind of knowing that I'm like, I got Jesus. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it says, I think the last one you read was, be careful.
Yes.
Because if you exercise your freedom, you might become a stumbling block to the weak. So I guess he said in verse 8, food doesn't bring us near to God, even though some good food does really make me happy and make me but food doesn't bring us near to God. And it says, like, if we eat food, we're no better than if we don't eat it. And we know that God talked to Peter about that in the dream, and he said, eat everything. Peter's like, I don't eat that stuff, Lord. And God's like, no, don't say you don't eat that, because I said that you can. So eat it. Do whatever you want. Like, we're throwing out those eating rules of the Old Testament. But here it is. It says, because there are, does it call them weak? what does it call them? Extra, so that you don't become a stumbling block to the weak.
Yes.
Yes. So baby Christians, maybe people who just they're not quite on board yet, or they don't kind of understand, and they're watching you. They're not exactly sure what you're doing. And so if this causes them angst, then Paul says, be careful. Be careful. All right. So we'll be careful, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it also says here, Christian freedom does not mean that anything goes. It means that our salvation is not determined by good deeds or legalistic rules, but by the free gift of God. So that there it tells us that we have a responsibility, right, to again not just exercise our own freedom because we know, right, because of our knowledge, right?
Yeah.
But it also state I'm also taking this in as act in love for those around you, because those who are watching you, you're kind of like as a Christian, you're kind of like not like an influence.
Yeah, role model.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be careful.
Yeah, and have love for those who are just starting off, because you don't want them to stumble. And
no. Yeah, and it says don't, so your freedom doesn't get to override other people's you need to love them. If you have all this freedom creates love, and so you just need to be cognizant and careful of people who are weaker in the faith. That sounds like so condescending.
Well, it says we must
people who are weaker in the faith than me, but it could be me. I could be the one who's weak in the faith, right? And I'm hanging out with somebody who whatever, is exercising their freedoms, and then causes me to stumble or causes me to have issues. So it's not that I'm all that or we're all that. Like this is a warning to every single one of us. Warning. But I like what you read in there. I think it went on to say Christian freedom then is inseparably tied to Christian responsibility. So new believers are often very sensitive to what is right or wrong, what they should or shouldn't do. Some actions are perfectly all right for us to do, but they might harm a brother or a sister in Christ who is young in the faith and is learning what Christian life is all about. We must be careful not to offend a sensitive younger Christian, or by our example to cause him or her to sin, right? When we love others, our freedom, this is it. When we love others, our freedom should be less important to us than strengthening the faith of another believer. So, and maybe you've led somebody to Christ. I hope you have, or you've talked to somebody about Jesus, or you're mentoring or kind of hanging out with a person who's young in the faith. And I did this too. You're kind of like, they're like, where's the line? So I can do, whatever, situation A, situation B, situation X. I can go like right up to here, and then like right here is sin. So like, so you're saying I can do this right to here, it's like everybody loves to use drinking because, drunkenness is, well, it's a barrier for you to get into heaven. It says drunkenness. So how many drinks can I have? Can I have a half a beer? Can I have 8 beers? Can I have a case of beer? I don't know how much that is. A lot. So, how much can I drink before I go into the sin territory? How much will God allow? And while we shouldn't really think about things like that, we should just try to eliminate all of that stuff from our lives. Anything that would take us like close to sin. But I get it. When you're a new believer, you're trying, you're like, well, I told a white lie, I told a little lie to save their feelings. So that's okay, right? Is that okay with God? So it's like you're figuring it all out. And maybe you've been there. I've been there.
Yeah, I tried, like, what is it, loopholes? Try looking for loopholes.
Loopholes. Oh yes, those are the best.
Yeah.
Are there any in here? Yes.
Yeah.
Can I do something that I probably is not right, but just like a little bit? Can I shop for shoes just a little bit, even when I already have too many? It's like, well, you have a relationship with your husband and you have a budget, so why don't you just be careful? Be careful. So there you go. My husband's watching this. See, look, honey, I'm not so immature in the shopping faith. Working on it. Okay.
Yep. So let's see, verse 10. For if others see you with your superior knowledge eating in the temple of an idol, won't they be encouraged to violate their conscience by eating food that has been offered to an idol? So because of your superior knowledge, a weak believer for whom Christ died will be destroyed. And when you sin against your other believers, by encouraging them to do something they believe is wrong, you are sinning against Christ. So if what I eat causes another believer to sin, I will never eat meat again as long as I live, for I don't want to cause another believer to stumble.
There we go. So I know that it's talking about meat. I get it. We're talking about food. I get it. But just take the, kind of float up to 30,000 feet and just remember it is really talking about our freedom is less important than the possibility of strengthening another believer. Just because we're free to do things and that we know we're all full of knowledge and we're like, no, it's okay. I can do this and be super close to God. People who cannot, we just need to be careful because our freedom is not more important than helping them, edifying them, lifting them up, strengthening them. Because that's what love is putting others first. So, bully for us. Good job. What do you think?
You're absolutely.
Oh, that's what this good book says. So that's what this good book says. I think that's kind of the whole. It's kind of just the whole chapter. Is that when we love others, our freedom is just not as important as strengthening our brothers and sisters in the faith.
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't take your friend who has, I don't know, a porn addiction, I guess,
right,
to a movie that's full of that stuff because you're not addicted to it. You know what
yeah.
I mean? You shouldn't be going out to see those kind of movies anyway, but you definitely don't want to invite your friend.
Right, who has an issue, who is a weaker, vessel.
Right.
And yeah, you have the freedom. You have the freedom to do what you want, but what are you doing with that freedom? Because what do we, if those freedoms, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. God gives us freedom, but he also says you need to use that freedom to show love to others.
So
that's a challenge. That's a challenge. So everybody's been really quiet. Does anybody have any questions? Or, I know this is about meat. We've talked about like a few other instances, like drinking and porn and smoking. Like, are there any other like things where you have freedom that maybe somebody who is younger or less mature in the faith would have problems with that you're doing? Like, I don't know that we have a lot of food offered to idols anymore. So, except like in those restaurants, like we were talking about,
that's right.
the food to Buddha, and they're not usually selling that. So we're not snapping that up, and it's cold. So. Yeah, so I don't know if there's any other instances. Are there any other instances that you can think? Porn was a very current one. I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know. I'm not that creative. I
No,
guess I
that's
kind of
it.
think about like as we go, but or as you hit an issue. But
Nope, that's it.
but again,
Yeah.
if you love others, your freedom will never outweigh the responsibility to strengthen a new believer. That is what we are pulling out of this food chapter.
So I guess you can replace meat with whatever it is that.
Yes, whatever it is that you have freedom
Yeah.
to do that could cause others to stumble. So that is exactly it. We don't really have this problem anymore, but we absolutely understand what they're saying, because he's saying, freedom doesn't mean that you can act like a fool or hurt others. That's the big deal, and that is sin. So that's sin that you're causing them to sin. Yeah, it's sin. Let's avoid that altogether.
And it says that you're sinning against Christ when you cause.
Ouch! It totally
Yeah.
does say that. What verse was that? That's
12.
12.
And so by sinning against the brethren and wounding their conscience,
yikes.
when it is weak, you sin against Christ. I'll leave you guys with that.
I know. We're like, and but bump. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, well, that is 1 Corinthians chapter 8. Thank you for joining us. Tomorrow night, we've got Genesis, and I know Pastor Gay and Pastor Dan just came home from a great trip. I don't know that they're home yet, or they're like getting home, but they will be here tomorrow at 7 to lead us in the study of Genesis. And I did not look up before we started what chapter they're in. I can't ever remember what chapter I'm supposed to be in, so don't take that personally, Dan and Gay, but I think they're in the 30s.
Yes, I think so.
They're in the 30s. How's that for perfection and exact numbers? Tune in tomorrow at 7 to find out.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll be back here Sunday at 5, and you can watch our worship service. And then we'll be back here Tuesday. I think Tuesday at 4:30 is going to be on hiatus one more week, maybe two, as John recuperates. Please say a prayer for our friend John, our fellow teacher. But Tuesday at 7, we're in Luke. Wednesday at 7, we're in 1 Corinthians. Thursday at 7, we're in Genesis. So you've got great options to study the Bible with us, and we're hoping that you will do that. That would be fantastic. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys.
See you all next week.
We'll see y'all next week. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna click this stuff. She's clicking it, and I think it's the one.
Were we recording?
No,
All right.
I didn't.
We'll see you guys next